What we need is not more medication, but more education, because the best prescription is knowledge. This is Exposé coming to you live from Lagos, Nigeria, every Monday on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook simultaneously. I'm the regular host, Tony Akinyemi. Don't forget, what we need is not more medication, but more education, because the best prescription is knowledge. Hello and welcome to Exposé with Tony Akinyemi as we continue our conversation on environmental pollution. Last week we looked at agrochemicals, how they impact the environment, how they impact the ecosystem, the ecological balance, how they impact even on animals, and the effect on our health, and how we need to be very careful in the use of these chemicals. While we may not be able to totally run away from them, but there is a common sense approach to using them so we don't endanger our health, either in the short term or in the long term. And so a lot of work still needs to be done in this regard by all of us, all stakeholders, the government, various government agencies, and each and every one of us. And then for those who already are victims of exposure, we also need to find help for them, how these problems can be mitigated. It's still a very, very tall order in this environment in particular, but then it's something that is doable, and we are committed to doing it. We are honored to have with us again today Professor Joshua Ojo of the Faculty of Science of the Obafemi Awolowo University in Nigeria. Professor Ojo is Professor of Physics with special emphasis on health physics at the Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife, Nigeria. He's also an alumnus of that great institution. He has served as head of department of the Department of Physics between 2011 and 2015. And for over 30 years, he's been a researcher with research stints at various institutions in the United Kingdom, the United States of America, and the rest of Europe. He served as a research contractor for the International Atomic Energy Agency in Vienna between 2001 and 2014. He also started the Church Arise Living Water Ministries in the year 1998 and the Living Science Foundation in 2015. As a professional counterpart to address environment health issues using scientific creationism paradigms. He is married, like we mentioned last week, to Dr. Olushola Ojo, and the marriage is blessed with grown children. All right. And last week we looked at agrochemicals, we looked at their effect, the impact on the environment, and what we can do to mitigate. Today, our focus is shifting to yet another area of environmental pollution, and that is indoor and outdoor air pollution, or what we call toxic fumes. Fumes that are coming out from our environment and polluting the environment. Industrial fumes, vehicular fumes, and all kinds of fumes all over the place. I remember I used to live in a particular neighborhood here in Lagos, Nigeria, where I live, where the residential estate is in close proximity to an industrial estate. And so all kinds of black fumes and smoke and chemicals will be oozing out of those factories. And they would disperse into the atmosphere and they would descend on our residential estate. Sometimes we saw this black powder soot settling on plants, ornamental plants within our compound. In Nigeria today, in Port Harcourt, in River States, and various other towns around that area, there's a lot of black powder, soot, that is in the air, polluting everywhere. And all of these are threats to human health, life expectancy, and what have you. We also have individuals who have, as reported in newspapers and even electronic media, who have bought these little small generators to provide electricity for their homes. In Nigeria, we call it "I better pass my neighbor" generator. And they put those generators in one little corner in their homes, and then they want to be able to use their fans overnight, so at least they can cool themselves and also ward off mosquitoes. And then before morning, they have carbon monoxide toxicity. And sometimes entire families have been wiped out altogether. So these toxic fumes are a major, major concern for us. And we need to begin to pay attention to them. I was reading a few articles in certain peer-reviewed journals recently. In fact, as recently as March and April 2023. Now, there was a study published in The Lancet in March 2023 that states, and I quote, "Nearly the entire global population is regularly exposed to unsafe levels of air pollution particles that can enter the bloodstream through the lungs and contribute to premature death, heart disease, and other health problems," unquote, in The Lancet. And then in April 2023, I read another one in the Journal of Environmental Epidemiology. And in that journal, it was reported that, I quote, "Exposure during pregnancy to air pollution from sources such as traffic and heavy industry may cause reduced lung function in children," unquote. This is from the journal Environmental Epidemiology, published in April 2023. Very, very recent studies. Now, environmental pollutants, air pollutants, is a very serious matter. They affect our air quality. So, Prof, today, I welcome you once again to Exposé with Tony Akinyemi. I want us to start from simple definitions. Let's talk about air quality. What exactly is air quality?
Thank you very much, Reverend. Once again, it's a pleasure for me to be here, and I thank you so very much for giving me this honor and privilege. Air, everybody needs air. You can't do without air. So the quality of the air, the natural air is nitrogen, percentage, then about 20% oxygen, some traces of noble gases and all that. So when that natural composition is changed, then the air quality begins to worsen. So we measure what is in the air, and based on this, numbers have been ascribed to, to describe that environment. So the air quality depends on what do you have inside, apart from nitrogen and oxygen. So you are talking about particulate matter. We have the PM 2.5, that's particulate matter, 2.5 microns or 10 microns. The PM 10 are the ones that can be stopped, maybe from the nostrils and whatever can be filtered off. But the PM 2.5, they can percolate right into the lungs, like you mentioned earlier on, leading to various issues. So the amount of these substances that are not supposed to be there, whether they be particulates, including soot, which you mentioned, black carbon, or in particular gases like SO2, sulfur dioxide, NOx, there's various oxide of nitrogen, ozone at the ground level, tropospheric ozone, CO, which, like you mentioned, is generated when we have generators not burning effectively, like two-stroke engines, generators. I better pass my neighbor, like you put it. And it's very unfortunate because we see this happening almost every year during the festive season. When you have the fashion designers, they need to work overnight. It's almost every year you find in the news. So you've got to finish this work. So you put on a generator in an enclosed place. So the air quality becomes degraded because the level of this toxic fumes you have put it. The fume is a combination of the particulates, the suspension of the particulates in liquid and in these gases. So we have the fumes. And so when they are foggy, like we can call it smog, it's still okay because you can still see it straight away. The problem is when you don't even notice it, like the CO, carbon monoxide, that kills people in those situations you describe, is odorless, and you can't see it, it's not visible. So it's quite more dangerous in that, more lethal in that respect. So the air quality has to do with what's not supposed to be in the air that is there. So there are various authorities, various countries, they have formulas that they use to quantify. We call it the AQI standard, air quality index. And it can range from 0 to 500. And you can say good, healthy, unhealthy, very unhealthy, hazardous, and so on and so forth.
All right, Prof, thank you very much for the definition of air quality. Is there a way that I can test the air quality in my house, in my room, for example, to know whether the air in my bedroom is safe for me to breathe in overnight?
Yes, there are a number of handheld monitors that are and cheap that are now available, can measure specifically some gases. Yeah, it's possible. There are devices to do that, can measure the particulate based on various techniques, but they are available. Oh. And in fact, many people are encouraging that. They're encouraging people we have big websites which encourages citizens to monitor their levels and upload so it can form part of the global network and which can be used generally. So it's quite possible.
Now, in your first answer, you mentioned different things that can pollute the air. I want you to highlight the major air pollutants in Nigeria in particular. What are the major ones for Nigeria? Maybe the top 3 in Nigeria that pollute the air.
Particulate matter.
Right.
That's particulate matter. It can be graded into 2.5 microns above. So particulate matters.
What examples? Examples of that?
No, particulate, that means like dust. So
okay.
Particles. So, right. So it depends on the composition. But generally, PM is deadly, generally. But the hazard, particular hazard, will have to do with the chemical composition. Is it particles of lead, or is it soot, like you mentioned, or some other particles, cadmium? So particulate matter, sulfur dioxide is important. That is why we are concerned about our fuel. Nigerian fuel emits very low sulfur. We call it sweet crude. Unfortunately, we export those sweet crude and import the dirty fuels, which have high sulfur from Europe. That's the situation. So sulfur dioxide is important. Oxide of nitrogen, NO, we just call them NOx. Can be NO, can be NO2. Then carbon, CO, carbon monoxide. And of course, ozone is also an important hazardous ingredient in the air. So those are generally the pollutants that are measured and which pulled together we use to form indexes for the air quality.
All right. Now, how important is air quality to human health? How important? And what are the established adverse health effects of air pollution on human health?
It's extremely important because we have to breathe in. And if you breathe in the wrong thing, unintended consequences will have to follow. So the impacts, obviously, to start with, we have the respiratory respiratory impacts, the lungs. We have the upper respiratory tract, which might be minor, but they are there, coughing, whatever, rhinitis. Then in the lower area, the lungs, you can have asthma, you can have bronchitis, you can have all those things. You can have the lung function impaired lung function. You can't take in as much air. But you can also have those things going inside into the bloodstream. So lung cancer, respiratory effects, and we also have cerebrovascular issues like strokes and whatever. All these are well established impacts of air pollutants in general. I did not mention cancer, and that's one that has been implicated with air pollution. So cancer, oxidative stress, and all other things, they are implicated in air pollution. Well, well established adverse impacts.
Okay, the lung cancer that you mentioned, I've come across individuals diagnosed with one form of cancer or the other. And typically, the answer or the questions on their lips will be, nobody in my family has ever had cancer. Where is this one coming from? And I sometimes tell them, well, even though we may not be able to tell precisely where this particular cancer you have is coming from, but you know, you may have been exposed to things that nobody in your family has been exposed to. And that's why you're having a problem that nobody in your family has had. Now you have just highlighted that air pollution can actually cause certain cancers, particularly lung cancer. Because when we breathe in air, the first organ of the body that thing goes into is the lungs. And it can have that primary impact in that place. Because all the pollutions in the environment enter our body through various channels. I mean, some of them we inhale, some of them we ingest, some of them they make contact with our skin, some of them they are even injected into our bodies. So we have inhalants, we have ingestants, we have contactants, and we have injectants. All of these channels, you know. You wanted to say something here. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, talk about cancer. I should have mentioned that about the air quality, there are other pollutants that they are not generally measured, put in the index, but they are deadly, like the dioxins. When we are the PAH, polyaromatic hydrocarbons, when plastics, and all those electronic waste. So this open air burning can introduce all these pollutants into the air, and they are quite deadly. The WHO, one report I read recently, said almost 2 million people, the lifespan is shortened. And many times the impact of the air pollutant is in aggravating existing medical situations in the body. And this is also very well established.
Now, do things like asbestos feature in this particular area we're talking about? Asbestos?
Yes, I mean, that is why it is prescribed, it's banned in materials, because it's well known to be carcinogenic. And so we have many materials now. By the way, the ceiling tiles, ceiling slates, we still call them asbestos slates. But of course, they are not asbestos. In fact, what you find written on them is non-asbestos, asbestos free. But many times we don't see the free. We just say it's asbestos, and still call it asbestos. So asbestos is well known to be carcinogenic and is prescribed. And we shouldn't find it. We normally don't find them except in old buildings that have been built in the 1940s, whatever, when there are fire incidents or whatever. So they can get released. But ordinarily, asbestos shouldn't be in any product right now.
Don't we have, buildings in Nigeria today that are still using asbestos materials? either for roofing or for ceiling?
No, I don't think Nigeria or SON will allow that. But you have them the old products. Yes. Okay. So today they actually write on them asbestos free.
Okay.
Those materials to assure the users, the public, that they are free of asbestos.
So what should old buildings that were built with asbestos, either for the roofing sheet or for the ceiling, what should people do if they live in such buildings?
They can remove them. They can remove them.
I mean, they are tenants. They are tenants.
Yeah, in Europe, you can't demolish your house anyhow. You have to bring in environment health people to take care, to make sure that the asbestos are removed in an organized manner that doesn't contaminate the environment and well disposed of. But air is part of the things we take.
Because I remember one time I visited the USA, and there was a particular building that was actually cordoned off completely. Every human being living there evacuated, and I was told that the experts will come to clean up the asbestos in that building and safely cut it away for proper disposal. I haven't seen that happening in Nigeria, or is it happening?
Absolutely not. People don't believe in it. They don't believe it's that toxic, whatever. So we just add it to the risks we bear. But the earlier we recognize this thing, the impact on our overall health. And that is the value of a program like this. I want to thank you again for giving us, the audience, the channel to make it known to the public.
All right, I think it's a good point to go on a short break right now. And when we come back, we will resume the conversation on air pollution. We've been looking at principal air pollutants in Nigeria and how they affect air quality. We have also transposed to look at how air quality has implications for our health at the end of the day. And we have also learned today that there are tools to test or to measure the quality of air in our homes so that we know precisely the quality of air that we're breathing. Because the quality of air we breathe has implications for our health, particularly our respiratory health. Because most of the pollutants in the air are inhaled and they get into the lungs and they can cause respiratory distress. They can cause even lung cancer. We have also touched on asbestos, that asbestos is a carcinogen. A carcinogen is a cancer-causing agent. And so asbestos is a banned product. Nobody should use it in their building projects anymore. And even old buildings that have asbestos used should be attended to by the appropriate agencies with their experts to come and properly take away and dispose of the asbestos properly to preserve human health. So we go on a short break. This is Exposé with Tony Akinyemi. Don't forget, what we need is not more medication, but more education. For the best prescription is knowledge. When we come back, Professor Joshua Ojo of the Department of Physics, Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife, Nigeria, a professor of health physics, will be answering the question on the principal sources of air pollutants, particularly in Nigeria. Don't go away. We'll be back very shortly.
Meet Emily. She is passionate about living a healthy life, but finds it difficult to access information on health and wellness.
Cancer is survivable.
That is until she discovered the online healthy living training offered by Reverend Tony Akinyemi on lms.rafainstitute.org. The online healthy living training program is a comprehensive interactive course that covers topics such as nutrition, fitness, stress management, and mental health. The course is designed to provide participants with practical tips and strategies to improve their health and well-being. Emily is now equipped with the knowledge and skills she needs to live a healthy life. Join Emily and countless others in living a healthy life by signing up for the online healthy living training program today.
Welcome back. This is Exposé with Tony Akinyemi, and our focus of discussion today is on air pollutants, indoor air and outdoor air. And we have on set with us discussing this very important subject, Professor Joshua Ojo of the Obafemi Awolowo University. He has been answering questions on air quality, air pollution, air pollutants, the principal air pollutants, particularly in Nigeria, and the impact of air quality on our overall health. The next question I want Prof to answer today is, what are the principal sources of air pollutants? Maybe globally first, and then specifically Nigeria. What are the principal sources of air pollutants?
Two categories, two classifications broadly. We can look at the natural sources and the anthropogenic sources, the ones by man. So the major anthropogenic sources will be from combustion products. When you take a fuel and you want to derive energy from it, so it depends on the efficiency of the facility, of the machine, of the device. You could have incomplete combustion. And these products, they pollute the air. So we can talk about, in Nigeria, for instance, I believe the most common one is the air pollution, traffic pollution. The man-made sources result from incomplete combustion. They are combustion products. And in Nigeria, or worldwide, actually, the major ones polluting the outdoor air will be traffic, because we have a lot of cars, vehicles burning diesel or gasoline. So these are major sources of air combustion of vehicles. Of course, we can also have in industries doing the same thing. Like you mentioned at the beginning, we have these generators all over the place. And unfortunately, not well ventilated, so that the fumes, the level built up to hazardous levels. That's a real problem. Built up in enclosed places. Cooking, either fossil fuel, firewood, wood, or whatever we are burning. Whenever we are not burning it efficiently, CO, SO2, depending on the content, are released into the air. And so these are major sources. Other sources, of course, include smoking, which is well known. Smoking is a major impact. Last week, we talked about pesticides. Pesticides are categorized as part of contributors to air pollutants. The fuel additives, sometimes the things you added to the fuel, when you burn them, they are major issues. We can have fugitive emissions from unpaved roads. And we can also have mining activities, quarry activities. For instance, you mentioned Port Harcourt, where you have a lot of what you call illegal refinery. So most of those things, suits, all those, they come out. Talking about cancer the other time, about asbestos, is those dioxins, things when we burn plastics and electronic waste. To me, they are a major source of carcinogen in our air. And we need to pay attention to them. So these are sources of air pollutants in Nigeria. And of course, we have the natural ones, when you have volcanoes, when you have bush burning. Bush burning, sometimes it happens naturally. Many times we do that as part of our agricultural practices. And it generates huge amount of air pollutants. And many other things. Yeah.
Wow. You've touched on many scary things, scary practices that we carry out in Nigeria. I mean, we cook with a lot of firewood in this part of the world. And we burn fossil firewood a lot. Now, what are your thoughts? Are you saying that people should stop cooking with firewood? Or what can they do to minimize air pollution?
Yeah, of course, it will be nice. And I think there are now stoves that are being marketed, which are designed to burn more efficiently. The issue is burning efficiently. I am aware that Nigeria has prescribed the use of 2-stroke engines in Nigeria, in generators and whatever, because they don't burn fuel efficiently. So it's not, the issue is not generating it at all. It's not using those fuel. We have to move. Like now, see what's happening in Poland, see what's happening in Germany. As a result of the energy crisis in Ukraine, they are falling back to firewood in Poland and coal in Germany. So the issue, it will be nice if we can make them burn more efficiently, so that we have less toxic materials released into the environment. And when we needed to do that, we should take care to make sure that we minimize our exposure. I think it's totally unwise when we do these things in enclosed places. If we can have snacks, that's why we have chimneys. We can still release them high into the upper atmosphere. We can still get along with them. But when we now release them, sometimes it's the location. A lot of problems we have. We have industries, like we have the local problem we have in Ife. Major industry in Ife is one. I don't know. I don't want to give them bad publicity, but we have them. The smelting company, iron smelt. The problem is it's located in the valley, so the chimney is at the road level. That's a big problem. So we have chimneys, tall stacks, but what they're releasing it at the ground level effectively. So it's a big problem. So if you need to burn firewood, whatever, as we may need to, let's get efficient devices for the combustion. And the exhaust, let's make sure they go up in stacks and released into the upper atmosphere. Then we can go on with life.
There are other things like burning plastic. And that happens a lot because everywhere you turn in our environment here, plastic litter everywhere, and people just gather them and burn them. Would you please enlighten us more on the dangers of doing that?
Yeah, the danger is in the chemical in those plastics. The polyaromatic hydrocarbons, PAs, there's a problem that happened in Ohio, in the US, the train derailment. You have the PCBs in the air, and then they burnt it. And people are now, it's a big issue because in burning those PCBs, the polyvinyl chlorides, you now get them released into the air. So if you must do burning, it should be controlled burning. You can have special incinerators, and I believe government have some of them. But that is when we patronize government, the health officers, the environment health officers services. But most of us prefer to just burn them. And as we burn them, these dioxins and PHs, they are released into the atmosphere. And it can add up at the end of the day. So if they are done in the outskirts, where exposure to them can be minimized, then it's possible. It's still controlled. But when we do them indiscriminately at the backyard and all those, that's when we really have big troubles.
Thank you very much, sir. You also mentioned 2-stroke engines the other time that has been banned by NASRA. But all over the landscape, particularly in our climb, we do see these single-stroke, two-stroke engines flying all over the place. I don't know how many strokes we have for our tricycles, for example, Keke Napep, Keke Marwa. How many strokes engine is that one? And some of our motorcycles as well.
I'm not quite sure of the situation, but I know they are prescribed. So if you are having them around, I don't think Nigeria and SON will permit them if they don't meet those. That's what I would like to believe.
Okay, all right. We thank God for that. So essentially, we all have a role to play in maintaining air quality by not doing intentional bush burning indiscriminately, by not burning plastics in our environment, and by using more efficient ways of using firewood for cooking. And probably, if it must happen, to happen in the open, not in an enclosure where the smoke can fill everywhere. Because when these things go up into the upper atmosphere, nature has a way of taking care of it so that it doesn't impact on us. There are two things I want you to address, Prof, in this one before we move to our next question. Yeah. One has to do with, can you please explain to us how nature takes care of those toxic gases when they get into the upper atmosphere? How does nature clean them up, mop them up so that they don't impact our lives? That's one question. The second question is, we do have in some climes, particularly in the temperate regions of the world, they have these fireplaces where they burn fire during winter to warm the house. I mean, in modern days, they have heaters and electric heaters and what have you, but in those days, they used to have firewood, and some people still maintain that traditional old firewood places in their sitting room, in their living room. Isn't that hazardous, going by the kind of gases generated from those fireplaces?
Yes, those fireplaces have chimneys. So okay, they channel those fumes into the, at least, and we should have the same thing for all these big vans, trailers. They should have some chimneys, stacks, that we make sure that the fumes go into the upper atmosphere. Of course, right, depending on the weather condition, the wind, and all that. So provided they have stacks that are high enough to channel them to the upper atmosphere, I think, well, that's a general belief that nature will take care of them. The first question is more of chemistry. I am not too versed in the actual chemistry, but we know that most of the things, we call it dilute and disperse. It's like the ocean. Generally, is taken care of. Of course, some of them may come back as depositions, can be fall back, deposited, or washed down with rainfall and all that, and go into streams. So that is why it's an ongoing engagement. We need to know the exact nature of what goes up. Some of them are persistent. Mercury goes into the air, it's going to be there for a long time. And if it's washed down into the air, into the stream, it's still equally deadly. Sulfur, if it comes down, we still have acid rain and whatever. But some, they are taken care of and they are not so problematic. Some people bother about CO2. Personally, I won't bother about CO2 because the plants actually need the CO2. Right. And so on and so forth. So, like you said, I would just say, I'm not an expert on that. I would just say the way you have said it, that nature takes care of it, provided we don't have some persistent or particularly noxious species. We can, once we ensure that we have a high enough stack, with the volume of air makes it negligible. What we're exposed to is negligible at the end of the day to impact us negatively. So we call it dilute and disperse. So it's diluted in the air, and we can safely, as far as we know, currently ignore it.
Thank you very much, sir. Yeah. Okay. In the course of your answer, you mentioned acid rain. Acid rain. I know some of our viewers who want to know better on what is acid rain.
Yeah, in trying to say that nature takes care of things, I was saying that sometimes the way nature takes care of it could still be detrimental. So if you have sulfur dioxide, SO2, which can occur when you burn dirty fuel, part of the way it's taken care of that, it is washed down when it rains. So it's dissolved in water, in rainwater, and it comes down. So that rain is acidic, and it affects buildings, plants, because the pH is in the acid range, and it can affect things, and even it can affect human health directly if you breathe it. It's like breathing in acid. It can corrode, it's corrosive, so it can affect many things within the body, or it can affect buildings, like it can make paints to get chipped off. Those chipping paints, in Nigeria, our paints, we'll be talking about lead in our next episode. That's one of the criminal things we're still doing. We have high level of lead in our paints, and this acid rain will impact that, get it off. If the paint is on the wall, no problem, but with the acid rain, then it becomes available and people can be exposed to them. So acid rain is the sulfur, SO2 getting dissolved in water and coming down, precipitating down as rain. So the rain is acidic.
Thank you for the enlightenment, sir. I will ask my last question for today because our time is again running out. And after that, I will ask a few other pertinent questions regarding your work, outside of the classroom. So the last question I want to ask for today's episode is, what are the major determinants of human exposure to air pollution? And how can we minimize our exposure? What are the major determinants of human exposure to air pollution? And how can I, as a person, minimize my exposure to these pollutants?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. The pathways of exposure. The air is polluted. We should do our best to minimize the pollution at the source. I think in Lagos, there was a time they tried to do vehicular testing. I know they do. They tried it in Ife, in Osun State at the time. I don't know how to put it. Because they accost you and ask you for the certificate without doing any tests. Yeah. Just need to pay the money and just get the certificate. It's so outrageous. So if you knew this thing is wrong, it's so deadly, why can't you make the effort to have measurements actually taken, and we know what to do? The point I'm making is that the situation here is like a joke. We have cars, vehicles, we call them tokumbos, that don't meet emission standard anywhere. You import them in, and they continue to, and then the traffic, we have the grid locks. When the vehicles are moving very well, the combustion efficiency is still better. But when you're in a grid lock, everything builds up. And then we have these corridors, tiny streets, buildings here and there. It's kind of corridor effect. The transport sector is a major source of exposure. If you are on the road, I will ask you to mind your exposure. Road traffic is a major source here. I mean, for the general public, of course, those who are occupationally exposed, they know where the problem is coming for them. But for the general public, the road traffic, and the rest will be indoors, in cooking, deodorants. People use air fresheners, so-called. You got to be sure of the quality. You've got to be sure of what you are putting into the air. So we need to measure this. And the determinant of how much I take depends on the age, depends on the gender, the breathing rate. In a nutshell, I would say generally, Nigeria is the traffic. That's the major one that is anthropogenic. The other ones, of course, Harmattan. Harmattan is a big issue here. Harmattan is a big issue, I should mention. It comes from the Sahara Desert. It's blown northeast, all the dust, everything that's in the desert, they're blown here. Interestingly, in Ife, we measured about 20, 30 years ago. We did a big project here. We measured the air, the pollutant in the air in Kano and in Lagos during the Harmattan period. We find that the Harmattan is much worse, people will say, in the north at Kano. But what's happening there is that what are the big particulates, PM10. So they are visible, they cause fog. Say, this weather is so bad everywhere, but they are visible. At Lagos, we find that they are it's more deadly. That is what we found, and we published it. My professor then, Professor Luwole, because they are the PM 2.5, they are the inhalable fraction.
Right.
In traveling down, most of the big particulates, they settle along the way. So they come here, the weather looks clean, except on few days. They look clean generally, but they still contain these particulates from the Sahara Desert, and we are bringing them in. Unfortunately, these are natural. It's only that if you can have air monitors, like it's done in many other places, then you can have warnings. There are times you advise people, please stay indoors today or during these hours because of the level. So then you can't see them. And the air, we have episodes of those air pollution. So that's why we need to have more monitoring stations, and government should give advisory services so I can minimize those that are natural. For the anthropogenic sources, the body is in our courts. Don't cook in close places. Don't put a generator where the wind pattern is to, because you can have the generator outside, well positioned, but the wind might be bringing them back your way. So you have to know the wind patterns. And if things are particularly bad, you have to shut things down. Either you shut the generator or you shut your windows or whichever. So these things, mostly education and then common sense, mostly.
Thank you so very much for all of these enlightenment. From what you have said, I can see that our various governments have a lot of things to do to contribute to this. First of all, monitoring importation to make sure that the right kind of vehicles, the right kind of engines are imported into Nigeria or into the country. Nothing too old should be allowed to come in. And then our transport system needs to be worked upon, particularly in major cities. I live in Lagos, and I can relate to some of the things you have said. You see vehicles moving on the road, and the smoke that is spiraling behind them can almost drown your entire car, you know? And yet, these vehicles, particularly commercial vehicles, commercial vans and buses, they are plying on the road, you know, and they are polluting everywhere, and nobody's doing anything about it. When MOT was introduced in Lagos, initially, you know, it was intended to, you know, control air pollution, but later it degenerated to the point where people didn't have to take their vehicles for testing. You just pay the fee, and then you get your certificate. It became a revenue-generating effort rather than a health, you know, issue. But thankfully, that has changed. I can attest to the fact that that has changed today. In fact, it was just this last month, April, that I did my own MOT for my car. And I had to take my car there for them to test. So I was so happy that Now they are doing actual testing, which is very good. Yeah. Yeah, so that for me is cherry news. It's very good development in Lagos State right now. I hope other states can also take a cue from that and begin to do that. Yeah, the other one has to do with another thing government has to do. You mentioned air monitors that they do in other parts of the world where the quality of air, particularly in major cities, is being measured by government so that they can give advisories to the citizens. Don't go out today because the air is polluted, stay indoors, and so on and so forth. I'm not sure I've ever seen that. I'm in my 60s right now. I've never heard once when government says stay indoors, because the air outside is polluted. Yeah, but it's something that I believe we can develop into, we can grow into as a country. Prof, thank you very much for your insight. Thank you for your knowledge and your willingness to share it with us regarding air pollution. I will have asked you to talk about indoor air compared to outdoor air, but we have run out of time. But let's talk about your work. Apart from teaching, apart from lecturing as a professor of physics, what other activities are you involved in that might be of interest to our viewers?
We're supposed to do 3 major jobs: teaching, of course, number 1. Then we conduct research, and then public advocacy, like this kind of opportunity you are giving me. We try to communicate with the public, and we do that. And personally, because I'm passionate, it's not satisfactory to me that I should just keep quiet and just publish papers. So we started the Living Science Foundation, and I am glad to say that you are one of the people who actually helped us, who encouraged us. Well, I remember when I came to Lagos to ask that you kindly be on a technical advisory team, which you agreed to. So we have an NGO, which is the Living Science Foundation, which tries to bring together stakeholders, because one of the challenges in environment issues is that many times we are doing our things in silos. If we all come together and we share information, we can see the extent of the issues and we can find out, because we try to promote what we call sustainable development. We can't just say, shut the cars, don't use firewood, don't do all those kind of things. Some people think that is the way to go. I know personally it will not work, and it's not necessarily the best thing for us. We should look for home-made solutions. And the goal is what we call sustainable development. And this comes about when we all come together and share ideas. We know what we want to prevent, we know what we want to get. So we have this NGO that tries to do that. And we thank people like you for all the support that have been given unto us. That's part of the things I do, sir.
Thank you very much. So the Living Science Foundation is one of your babies, and we thank God for the various conferences and impacts that has made. You also do Church Arise publications. I've read 1 or 2 or so of your articles, and that has always addressed, contemporary health issues, particularly public health issues. And we want to thank you for what you do in that regard. I believe that they're going to put your website of the Living Science Foundation on the screen for those who may want to explore and see some of the things, your activities in that regard. I'm also aware that you do secondary school things, and what have you. Right.
Last month, we were with the NYC Youth Corpus, so various categories. We used to do this as, like we said, Church Arise. We talk on environment, health, general things, but we saw that it might be, the impact will be more if you can professionalize it. So that's why we have the Living Science Foundation as a registered charity NGO, and we can bring in all stakeholders and we focus on the issue of environment, health. And it's going further than what Church Arise could have reached. So that's the whole point. And it's meant to address environment health, an issue, like I said at the last episode, issue of creation, science, and evolution. I believe you cannot address environment health issues in a sustainable manner, in a way that will work. It won't work if we just say we get solutions from Europe or from America. Number one, what works there may not work here. Right. And number two, so we have to get our own made solutions. And right. The perspective with which we come in matters. If we understand that the ecosystem, there's a design, we can look for this design and work in tune with the design. Rather than, like one of the things I do in Europe, this gain of function research, which is causing a lot of havoc to mankind. When people say, okay, we believe in evolution, we know this COVID thing or flu thing can jump to humans, can do this naturally, so we want to go ahead and fast track it to see what are the possibilities. That's what it's all about. And at the end of the day, it gets out of hand. From our perspective, we know by creationism perspective, based on biodiversity we have, I have little fear of zoonotic things becoming endemic. The circle is going to cut short. The diversity is in us already. It won't go. We've lived together for thousands of years. So there's really no need to panic. So that perspective, for instance, it determines the way, the kind of research we do and the kind of our responses to things. So Living Science Foundation, we try to promote the creationism point of view and the issue of lifestyle and all those things, which you two are promoting at TSF. I want to thank you for what you're doing, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. So in summary, creationism is not in favor of gain of function research.
Yeah, it's really not, it's uncalled for. It's a panicky measure. Gain of function research is kind of panicky measure to say, okay, let's see what can happen if this thing evolve. Can it jump hosts and attack us in this manner? And some people who have actually other agenda, they use that as cover. And then they do it and then they say it has leaked out. Like COVID, for instance, now. Right. Some people believe it was engineered and it either leaked out or was released. We don't know whatever happened. But it is clear that it is part of the gain of function research that led to it. And it can be weaponized.
Thank you so much, sir. Our time is up for today. We must thank you very much again for finding time to be with us. We also want to thank our viewers for spending this beautiful Monday evening with us. On environmental pollution, we've had Professor Joshua Ojo answering questions regarding air pollution in particular. He has extensively discussed air pollutants and how people get exposed, the primary and principal sources of air pollution, how we can minimize our exposure, the risks in creating all of these pollutants in the air, the role of individuals as well as the role of governments in helping to control things before they get out of hand so that our population can be safer and live longer. In this part of the world, life expectancy is so short that we need to work on that and improve that. And one of them is air pollution and how to make sure our air quality is far better than what it currently is, particularly those who live in the major cities in the country. And I believe that mass transit systems by train, electric trains, and what have you, will do a major one, such that people don't spend too much time in traffic and they don't generate more pollution when there is a gridlock. But when there's free-flowing traffic, the pollution is minimal. And when the kind of vehicles and machines imported into the country are of the highest quality, that also minimizes air pollution when these vehicles ply the road. So it's a multi-pronged approach, and all hands must be on deck. We thank the government for the ones they are doing right, and we encourage them to please wake up in the ones they are not doing right. It is for the safety of all of us. There are many people who don't have the resources to run abroad for treatment when they get sick with these pollutants. So let's have mercy on them. Thank you, everyone, once again. Don't forget, this is Exposé with Tony Akinyemi, where we disseminate information for your health transformation, because we believe that the best prescription is knowledge. What we need is not more medication, but more education. Thank you very much. If you are yet to subscribe to our channel, please do so on YouTube. And if you are yet to like us on Facebook, please go ahead and do so. And share this video with your friends and family. It might save your life. Prof, once again, thank you very much. Would you like to say bye-bye to our viewers before we sign off?
Thank you so very much. It's a pleasure and a privilege. So please take charge and take care of your health. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir, and bye.
Meet Emily. She is passionate about living a healthy life, but finds it difficult to access information on health and wellness.
Cancer is survivable.
That is until she discovered the online healthy living training offered by Reverend Tony Akinyemi on lms.rafainstitute.org. The online healthy living training program is a comprehensive interactive course that covers topics such as nutrition, fitness, stress management, and mental health. The course is designed to provide participants with practical tips and strategies to improve their health and well-being. Emily is now equipped with the knowledge and skills she needs to live a healthy life. Join Emily and countless others in living a healthy life by signing up for the online healthy living training program today.